What's going on, y'all? So today, first of all, I'm gonna let y'all know I'm gonna eat when I tell y'all this video, okay? And I share my thoughts on some of these talking points. So today I watched a very interesting podcast, right? It was a very famous, I guess he's famous now, but it was a divorce attorney. And he was talking about his experiences as far as, couples wanting to get a divorce and, hiring him and, how good he is at his job and everything like that too. And so some of the questions asked to him was, are you in favor of marriages? Certain statistic questions like, who cheats more or stuff like that too. But, if you listen to like the whole podcast, it was very surprising, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, because watching this man's perspective, having insight on situations where marriages have gone wrong and seeing how hectic both parties can be, and then you listen to him talk about love and how he cherishes it. It's like, to me, I look at that and you have to respect that kind of mentality, because here you are, someone who deals with people whose love has gone wrong, for lack of a better term, and yet so strongly believes in it. And so he really asked a question that I think is important to ask, not for the reason I think he asked it, but I think it's more so for a personal reason. And the question was, what problem does marriage solve, right? And again, for him, when he asked it, it was more so of a context of, what is the purpose behind the way we practice marriage today? Getting the government involved and having all these laws and whatnot. What's the purpose of getting married if you can essentially just have the relationship without the legality of, the whole concept? Which I was like, okay, makes sense. I see your point. And then, the more he explained himself, I really started to kind of agree with him in a sense of, people do get married for essentially the wrong reasons, right? One thing he said was, you can have love without having marriage, which it is true. You can have that without being married. And, but I am a big fan of marriage. I think it's important. But again, not the legalistic marriage that I think a lot of us practice today, but more so the marriage that actually is a relationship between a man and a woman, right? And the reason I'm such a big fan of it is because I believe that God made marriage to be a place where, as men and women, we can come to as our place of rest. We can come to as our place of comfort. We can look to as our place of support. We can look to as our place of intimacy. We can look to as our place of just companionship. It's an institution by which, with this one specific commitment that I've made to this other individual, right, I can essentially get everything that I need, where instead of me having to, find a friend to go do certain things with, I have my wife. Instead of me having to find someone to go through life with, someone to support me, I have my wife, right? So they are that person, that first person that essentially has a say-so in things that happen in your life, because what happens in your life happens in their life as well. You're committed to one another. But I do want to get back to the question he asked, which is, what problem does marriage solve? And I think that, it's not just one problem. Like I stated earlier, it's multiple problems, and it's meant to be that way. Now, here's the caveat. I am a fan of marriage, but I don't think that marriage should be mandatory. And what I mean by that is that, like, the way in which we look at marriages today, I think is partially the reason why we have such a high divorce rate, which is essentially to say, like, we don't ask ourselves, why am I getting married to the person? We assume that marriage is the ultimate next step. The best way I can kind of like, I'm struggling on things to really draw an analogy from, right? But relationships are very personal, right? It's hard enough to find someone who you feel is going to be a great companion for you. It's hard enough to find someone who has the skills and the personal traits that will ensure your relationship is successful. Then comes the reason as to why you personally want to get married to this person. And although I stated all these other reasons before, at the end of the day, you still have to ask yourself, like, why do I want to get married? And I think because as a society, we've made it such a common thing. It's taken that purpose out of it. It's taken that personal attachment, I guess I want to say. It become kind of an expectation, but it's an expectation that we take for granted, right? So now it's to the case of, if you see two people together, and they've been together for a long time, you'll have people say, like, why aren't you married yet? Why aren't you, why haven't you proposed to her? Why haven't you made her an honest woman or an honest man? This, that, and the third. But I don't think we really truly sit and ask ourselves, like, what is the purpose behind you getting married to this person? Are you doing it because you feel it is the next step in your life? Or are you doing it because you understand what is required of you as a husband or as a wife, and you're willing to take on that responsibility because you value the relationship that you have built with this person, and because you value that relationship, there's also extra benefits as well down the road. I think for a lot of us, we look at marriage as just this next step in human evolution, when I don't think that's what it was designed to be, right? We have a choice in whether or not we want to get married. Now, if you are a Christian, obviously, the standard's a little bit more strict, right? The standard isn't to, just go around and do whatever you want. The standard is, hey, you honor God with your body, right? So that means don't be out there, being with whoever, doing whatever, being in whatever kind of relationships. But if you are someone who desires to be married, someone who wants to have that relationship, it is important, number one, to find the right person. Two, find someone who follows God after, like you follow God, right? Especially the Bible talks about being unequally yoked. There's a lot of reasons why, but we're not really going to get into that. But the main goal is, are you ready for the responsibilities that will come from this marriage? Again, like I stated earlier, I believe that the reason God instituted marriage between, us as humans, is because if you practice it correctly, if you love your wife and you love your husband, you show up for each other the way you're supposed to, you're faithful to each other, you communicate with one another, you do everything that you're supposed to, even when it's hard, out of that relationship, out of that relationship comes everything that you could possibly need in life, right? Companionship, friendship, support, love, and if you have kids, and you have a family, right? So out of that institution, essentially everything that we need as humans comes to fruition. We can build it out of that. It's the most stable ground that we have as a society to progress. I mean, that's why you can see a lot of people who have broken families. It ripples through down the line. There's so much negative traits that they got to work through. And when you look back and you say, well, what's going on with you? What happened? A lot of these problems that we have today as adults can be linked back to the fact that our family structure wasn't that great because it wasn't practiced the way it was supposed to be practiced. It starts with us as individuals. Are we the right type of people? Are we doing the things that we're supposed to? And if you are a follower of Christ, are you upholding his standard? Are you doing the things that God has instructed you to do, right? And then after that, it's okay. Are you loving your wife like you're supposed to? Are you loving your husband like you're supposed to? Are you showing up for them? Are you doing the things that are required of you to do and also going above and beyond? If those requirements are met, then what happens is you have become a person of integrity, a person of character. Then you've gotten with someone else of integrity, or someone else of character, and both your characters and integrity will form a stable relationship that when you have children, they can look at that and say, I have a first person view of what a healthy relationship looks like. I have a first person view of what the expectations is either out of me as a man or as a woman. And then from there, they go out, they take those lessons that they've been taught by their mom and their dad, and they go out into the world and they apply it. So that's all I really wanted to share. this is all I really want to share. But again, like I said, I'm a big fan of marriages, but what we also have to understand is it's not mandatory. And I mean that in the way of, if you as an individual do not feel that it is your calling in life to be married, you don't have to be married. You don't have to live your life, being scared of being in a relationship with someone that you just didn't want to be with, or in a relationship that you didn't want to be in the first place. If you feel that God has called you to just live a life of being by yourself, you're happy with that, you have friends, you're happy with the connections that you've made, but as far as that intimate relationship, you really don't want it, or you don't want the responsibility of being with someone in a marriage, of having to show up, that is fine. That is your choice to do so. But I also believe that marriages do work. And I believe that when they're practiced the right way, we get the best benefits out of that. And the last thing that I'll say is, if you do want to get married, don't get married for the benefit of getting married. Get married because you actually value the relationship, the commitment between you and your wife, or you and your husband, right? Don't sit there and say, well, I love her, and that's it. You might love her, but do you have chemistry, right? Which means, do you get along? Is there what's the word I'm looking for? Are you able to work well together, right? Are you on the same path in life? Meaning, I'll draw back. If you're a Christian, are you a Christian? If she is as well, then as both of you continue to grow your relationship with Christ, then you'll also grow towards each other. You're both moving in the same direction. Versus if you're a Christian and you're a non-believer, I might grow my relationship with Christ, and she might grow in a way that takes her further away from Christ. How do you rectify that, right? And if you're not a Christian, are you going towards the same things? Maybe one person in a relationship wants a family, and the other person wants to just live a life of being a career-driven individual. Well, one of those things has to take precedence. And if you're with someone who is not aligned with you as far as your goal within that marriage, it's not going to work, right? And, lastly, is to just love one another, but also learn how to love one another when times are hard, when things don't go the way you want them to, right? Set up some rules for yourself that will govern how you act, not when you love each other, but when there's contention, right? Set up some rules that you can say, hey, if we're having a disagreement, this is what we're going to do about it. If there's some contention within a relationship, this is what we want to do about it. This is how we want to address each other. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to go down this road. These are the things that are in line with what we believe and what we're trying to accomplish as a married couple. But again, like I said, I'm a big fan of marriage. I think that those who want to get married should get married, but it starts with being the right person, then being with the right person, then building the right foundation so that your family can go on to do great things, right? So, with that said, that's all I had to say. I'm gonna go ahead and enjoy my Chick-fil-A. Y'all have a good one. Deuces.